Hey gang, it is January 15th, 2019, and this is Brooklyn Pony Part 26. If you've been following the channel, you already know the history of this build, and there are 25 other videos that predate this one that show the beginning of this project. If you're new to the channel and you just now stumbled across this, I suggest you go back and look at the other 25 videos. This car came to me as a rusted to pieces 66 convertible, and basically I'm building the car from scratch, from the ground up, using Dynacorn parts and various other sheet metal and as many of the original pieces of the car as I could salvage from the rust bucket. So if you're this far along, you've already, if you've seen the other videos, you know that I've done all the installation of the sheet metal, the suspension, all those different pieces. And in the previous video, I showed how I would smooth out the deck lid for this car. It is sitting in my paint area right now, and it'll go back on the car in just a few minutes. This video is going to work on the right quarter panel. Now, I did show a video a few segments before that involved adjusting the sheet metal on the left quarter panel, because putting the extension on, it was not lining up properly, and I separated the welds and adjusted that quarter panel to make it fit more closely to the extension. So if you're having trouble with your quarter panel extension and the fitment, research that video. It's a few segments prior to this one, and that may help you out. This side I've been pretty lucky with. The quarter panel itself still has issues with the top, and I'll show you that in just a minute, but the shape is more correct. So that's a good thing. I don't have to do any adjustment on the welds on this piece. The extension is the original extension for the car, and I'll show you some things with that in just a minute as well. As I was stripping it down, I found there was some body filler, Bondo or whatever, and also many layers of paint. So I'll show you that more in just a minute. But I'm going to do a little overview and show you what I'm talking about. As I was saying, I've already reworked the driver's side, and even though this has body filler on it, you can see how nice the transition is between the two. Very smooth, and the lines are just right on the money now. So let me show you what's going on the other side. While this area here is nice, there's still a little bit of a transition problem here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's just a little tiny bit. And there's maybe a little more adjustment that I can do to this. However, this is the bigger problem. When you've got a nice peak on the extension, and then the quarter panel is basically just round. And I've shown it in the previous video, and I'm going to show you again. I have this contour tool. This is, I think I got it at Harbor Freight, made by Empire. And it's just a contour, gauge. And pretty simply, you can pick a position, press down on it, and these little rods will mimic the shape of whatever you want to copy. So I have that. Now I'm going to turn this around. Not that it's really going to matter much, but I'll turn it around so that it's a 180 and set it on top of this. Now you can see what the shape should be and how bad off that roundness is. So the only way I'm going to fix this is with body filler. Now there may be some alternative. Somebody may want to use lead or some other ideas, but ideally body filler is the easiest fix. People have said, well, what happens if it gets hit? What happens if it somebody strikes it with something? Well, it's the same thing as if you had metal. If you hit this and it's metal, you're going to put a dent there. If it's body filler, you're going to put a dent in it. Body filler is very tough. And, the old stuff from years ago that was, Bondo brand or whatever is not the greatest, obviously. And I don't use Bondo. I use Rage Ultra Gold. And I've had very good luck with that. It is very tough, and it holds up very well to any kind of conditions.
So I'm going to be using that to shape the top of that quarter. I'm also going to use it to shape the transitions here so that everything is smooth. And once I get the deck lid set on, it'll show you a little more what I'm talking about. And also, up here where the door and the quarter panel meet each other, I will also use body filler to match that contour. There's no way to make this any simpler in saying that body filler is going to fix all kinds of little problems with the car. Like up here, this is a little dent that was exposed once I sanded off the coating on this quarter panel. And let me point this out too. The coating that is on this car, this black EDP coating or whatever they want to label it, is very tough. It's bonded to that sheet metal. And it has been said to me by my paint rep and other sources that as a test to see how tough this stuff is, if you're worried about it, take some lacquer thinner on a rag and try to clean it off. If the paint comes off, take it all off. If it doesn't come off, it's there. It's part of the car. It's not going to go anywhere. But in this case, I went to bare metal to show you the condition of the metal and also to show you some of the flaws. It just makes it easier. And you can probably see, hopefully see, it's even rounded all the way up into here. And then as it gets closer to the door, it gets a little bit cleaner shape that matches the shape of the door. So that's a good thing. But I'm going to transition all of this. I want it to be a smooth line all the way back that matches the extension. Now obviously I want to start with a clean slate. So I'm going to remove all this paint that's on this car, on this extension. And basically I'm going to use some sanding disc, a little 2-inch. In this case, this is probably, I don't know what that grit is, 120, I think. But anyway, it's a yellow disc. And I'll gently work that paint off. Just want to clean this up, get all this residual junk out of here, get this old body filler out of here to find out what's going on. I do know on the driver's side, it also had some filler in that area. And it's probably not uncommon that these weren't shaped exactly right, and that's how they fixed it, or the previous body shop that worked on it, or whoever worked on this, filled that in as well. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, and then I'll start working on showing you how this is going to go together. Well, as you can see, this had a shallow dent in it. It's hard to say what hit that at what point in its life. And somebody tried an old body shop technique where they drilled a hole and they put a hook in it and pulled on it, and that made it a little shallow in the middle. It's not going to matter. This is pot metal. You can't weld on it. You could put some braze in there if you wanted to. It's not really going to make much difference. The fact is, this stuff doesn't really rust or anything like that. So just putting some filler back in there will take care of it. Some good quality filler. You can even see that was old, probably Bondo brand filler, and it was still in there. It wasn't going anywhere, but it needs to come out. You'll probably also notice I switched out discs in the middle, and this is a more aggressive disc because the lighter disc was filling up with contaminant from all the layers of paint that were on there, and that's going to take care of this extension and these minor scratches. That's really going to help with the filler hanging on to it. So I'm going to move on and do some more prep work and try to get this mounted exactly where I want it to sit. And also I need to get the deck lid in place so that everything lines up properly. So I have the deck lid in place, and it fits pretty nice. It's pretty close on this edge right here. Of course, there's no gasket, and it's always going to be a conflict later. These gaskets always tend to push the deck lids up. But I wanted to show you something, and hopefully I can make you understand how this works. With this in place, and it lines up on the quarter panel nice on the sides and really decent on the top. However, I don't know if I can get a better angle or not. It's a little short based on the deck lid. Now I can't change the length of the deck lid. In other videos that I've done in the past, I've talked about the fact that quarter panels may be short or long, and I've had to cut and modify them to make them fit, because you really can't change the length of the deck lid. You can limit the gaps, you can try as much as you want without, eventually causing problems at the front, because you could knock off paint and that sort of thing. So the conflict with this one is, with this tucked in tight on the quarter, it just has a little bit too much space right here. And I don't like that. So my plan is I want to bring this back just a little bit. I don't know if you can see that very much, but that mimics the shape exactly as I want it. There's a couple ways you could do this, but I'm going to show you my way, and if you're not comfortable with this, you may want to try a different way. However, I want to bring this back, it's really just 1/8 of an inch, maybe, if that, at this very corner. And that's going to help take care of all this alignment, because when you put this in, and let me reset the camera to show you a better angle on that. The biggest problem I have, aside from this offset here, is how this appearance is. With this all the way forward, the gap gets tight. There's really not much you can do unless you're going to modify the deck lid or try to grind down this surface. If you want it to look right, it needs to be back just a little bit. And you can see that helps with the gap. It makes it a little better down here at the bottom. And if need be, you could skim a little bit of filler right here on the inside of this just to try to clean it up. But that looks much better than that, in my opinion. And it's the little things. It's not like it's gonna completely ruin the job. However, for this kind of car, and what I see as an end result, I want my gaps to be as true as I can get them. So what I plan to do, again, might be a little risky for somebody depending on their experience, but for me it's a pretty simple fix, and I'm going to show you that. If you haven't noticed already, I took a Ziz wheel, which is one of these little thin cutoff wheels, and I cut a line right here. I want to manipulate this metal. If I push this back where I want it, and I take the screwdriver and put in that little gap, and I flex that back, that's going to fill up the space that would be left by the adjustment of the extension. So what I'll do is I'll flex that back a little bit, and I'll weld that To me, that's a pretty simple way to fix this, because I don't want to put filler in between these two pieces if I don't have to. I want to have it as much metal as I can. So that's going to be my fix, and that's what I'll do. Before I go any further, I want to show you something to show you that I'm not crazy. And there are differences in these quarter panels. This quarter panel, if I put a speed square on there and then I measure from the edge of the speed square to the edge of the corner, it's 9/16 of an inch. Basically from this point to this point. Let me show you what it is on the other side, and this is an exact comparison. Now of course I have already put my cut in there, and I did push this back just a little bit with the screwdriver as I was showing. But if I put this on, same location, and I measure a second time over here, five sixteenths. I know it's kind of hard to see that, but trust me, 5/16 is the difference. So you can see the shape of the quarter panel, even if you look straight across as I back up here, and then go over to that one on the other side. You can see how it angles. The angle's a lot steeper. Than this side. Just an observation. There's a reason why these things either fit very well or don't fit very well, and this is part of the problem. So again, I'm going to modify this and it will take care of this particular problem. As you can see, I have a paint mixing stick wedged to get this out at the proper length that I want. Now I'll spread this back and slowly start building a bridge of metal to hold it in place. As you can see, I did add some material up here, a little bit on the corner, and I may add a little bit later. The idea being that where that extension meets it has such a high corner that it at least gives me a solid point that I can blend to. So if I have some metal there, I can blend that out, and whenever I do the transition with the body filler, it'll make it easier because I have something to sand to that's solid. I think that looks much better than obviously what it looked like before. So just maybe a little more, touch up here and there, a couple little filler welds I might do and blend that down a little more. And that's pretty much it for doing any kind of more weld repairs on this back section. Now, since my focus in this segment is about this edge right here, and I want to go over this because I've already sanded this down with 80 grit and I've cleaned it, but I'm going to go over it again with some 100 grit. And the only reason I'm doing that is I want to make sure I've got a nice scuffed edge, nice and scratched, so that the filler will hold on even just a little bit better. So that's all I'm going to do, is just scratch it up a little more. Just like the top of this is rounded, so is this edge here. And that'll show up later on with the extension in place. It would be a lot more evident. But I'm going to show you how I'm going to address all this. The bottle says Brillo, but this is actually Windex. I'm just reusing an old bottle. Now I want to get this extension exactly where I want it to be and lock it down, make the bolts or make the nuts tight. Now, as I pointed out before, you want to make sure this is all mixed through. You want to have a consistent color. Switching to a slightly bigger paddle. And all I'm trying to do is get a consistent addition of filler up on that rounded portion of the top of the quarter panel. I'm probably working a little bit fast here because I did add a little bit too much filler. I mean, too much hardware. Go right over the extension. And it may seem crazy, but it works. Now I'm going to use my DuraBlock and some 3M 100 grit paper. I'm also going to use a dust mask. And I'm going to do a crosshatch pattern. So you'll see what I'm talking about if you haven't seen me do it before. But that's the block sanding technique. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm making it very thin. You can actually see through the filler. But the object is to get, the upper side filled in so that I can create what would be the corner. Obviously, I'm hitting metal at these points, which is fine. That's what I want. I want to remove as much material as I don't need. Put it that way. And then of course I'm hitting high metal on the extension. Now I want to work this top section. So I'll use this block some, but I will also use this round Durablock. I hope that gives you some idea of what I'm going for. Obviously, most of the body filler ends up on the floor, and very little ends up on the car. This is very thin. What you see is just a shadow of what was there. Now, I will say I'm going to have to add a little bit of filler. There's little spots where it didn't quite get up as high as I wanted it to, which is not a problem. There's also some pinholes where I blew it out with the air hose. Again, that's not a problem. There you can see where it didn't quite have enough material. And I wasn't going to keep sanding until that was gone, because I knew with that long block that I've already reached, the high points that I want. So I have a few more little pinholes back here, and that'll get filled. And just a couple little areas. Now when I get all this done, this will have a nice smooth transition. And you're probably wondering, well, what about the extension? Well, I'll show you that once I get everything else taken care of. And before I forget, any of those areas where there was not enough material and the body filler was a little bit shiny, I will scuff that up with a piece of the 100 grit sandpaper and make sure it's got some texture in it. Also, I'll make sure it's clean, blow it out again before I put any more filler on top. So I've already mixed up my filler. as you can see, I did cover the whole top of this piece of the quarter panel. The reason for that is I have some filler here, and I had some filler up here previously from there was a minor dent there or something that I addressed, and rather than have a body filler here and then a gap and then filler here, I'll make one smooth transition, and that way it doesn't show up later on. You'll find that if you address stuff like that ahead of time, it won't come back and haunt you later. Alright, so I've gone over this 2 more times, just filling in little spots, and had a couple little pinholes that I wanted to take care of, and now I'm done with this section. I did add a little more filler down here just to make the transition smoother as it led into the extension. If you look down the line on top of the quarter as it goes, it's very straight. And I will point out that if you're doing something like this, and you probably saw me sanding, you know, as I'm coming up and as I approach it from the other side, when you look down the line, if you see the line is pushing, say, outboard, you need to sand on this side so that it takes material away and brings it back up to center. Same way here, if it's the line is leaning this direction, you need to sand here, and that'll bring it back out. So that's right on the money as far as I'm concerned. So now at this point, what I will do is knock that corner down just a little. I don't want to make it round like it was before, but I'll try to mimic the more of the natural shape of the quarter and the extension as they should be. And to do that, I'm just going to take a piece of sandpaper by hand and run that across the top of the quarter. I don't know how else to show it to you other than the way I'm going to do it, and I'm using some 180 grit, and I'm just going to roll it across the top, gently knock that corner down. If you remember, I used this contour tool, and that shape is a copy of what's on the other side. So if I come into that corner, I can kind of get an idea of just how close I am. And that's pretty close, I must say. Now this is where it gets a little more interesting, because I'm going to unbolt this extension. And normally what I would do, and I don't have to, but normally I would just take the end of a hammer or a mallet and tap on it and break that seam, but that's going to come off relatively easy. I will point out too that sometimes you may have to shim the extension, and all I do there is I just put a few washers in between on the post so that helps with the spacing. At this point, there's a corner of the body filler. You can see it sticking out a little bit. And the rest of it is a clean break. So what I can do is take this section and just sand this surface and get this back to flat. Same way up here, I can just sand this surface and get that back to flat. Now of course I'll sand off that little point as well. Now what I'll have to do on the body, let me show you that. Now as far as the body, I'll add a little bit of filler up here on this corner and get that back in shape. And then along this edge, you can see there's maybe a couple little voids on that edge. And I'll add a little bit of filler there and sand that down. Same way up here, I may add a little bit of filler just to clean up this edge a little more. And then sand that as well. The idea is the structure is already there. We already know that the extension, once it's bolted in place, is not going anywhere. I don't want to have a hard contact, so I'll have a little tiny bit of space between the quarter and the extension based on any kind of spacers I want to put in here between them. And that way it's not rubbing or grinding or causing problems later on. So it'll take a little bit of work to smooth up this edge, but very minor. And I'll show you all that once I get it finished. Here's the end result. Hopefully you can see I did round this edge just a little bit. Of course you can't really do that with the extension because it's a more blunt edge, but I'll make a little video clip of the original 65 that I have, and it's very, very similar. In fact, this fits better right now than that other car. And again, I've spaced this a little bit with the washers so that it's not squeezing tight against this area. I don't want any compression on that just because. Normally this would have had a gasket in here and that gasket would have stuck out. You could have caught it with your finger as you brushed against it, but I'm happy with that. I know it's an expression I use. I've had people point that out, but I'm happy with that. It also fits very well. Hard to get the angle with the extension out, but fits very well across the deck or the deck lid, and that's it. I just wanted to show you this. I know it's hard to see, but this is the original 65 Mustang Coupe that I bought last year, and I just wanted to show you how this looks. I know it's kind of hard to see because I don't have a lot of light in here, but you can see that the quarter itself has a little bit of a roundness to it, and the extension is very straight, more of a sharp edge, and the top transition, and I'm sorry about the lighting, but it's trying to rain out here, or it is raining outside the garage. Just to give you an idea, I hope that gives you some reference as to how this original car looks. You know, they weren't perfect from the factory, but it doesn't mean we can't make them closer. Alright, that's the end of this video. I hope this was helpful in some way. I know we have a lot to deal with new panels. They're not as crisp on the corners as the originals, and so we have to figure out ways to address that, and that's how I did it here. The rest of these body lines are really nice now and consistent, and that is the goal. When somebody wants to look at this car and they see these lines, they're not going to notice, and that's the point. There's a lot of detail things that go into building these cars that get overlooked because they don't perceive or see all the work that went into it to get it to look like that. And that's good, actually, because you want people to be comfortable with the way it looks more so than saying, oh, look at this big whatever. So that's why I do these things. I want it to look right, and that way it's not a conflict. It just looks right, and people are happy to look at it and see it the way it should be. So that's it. Iron Man's taking it easy, and
thank you for watching. If you would be so kind, throw a thumbs up on there, like, subscribe, share, all those fun things, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. I can't get this right. Why can't I end this?